Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 32nd episode of the Soccer Scene, where I'm joined once again by Noel O'Connor. Noel, we're in good spirits tonight. It was a super weekend for Treaty United. A huge 4-1 victory over Premier Division side UCD in the quarter-final of the Extra.E FAI Cup. It was a brilliant night, Noel, overall. Obviously, the performance was brilliant from Treaty for throughout the 90 minutes. Then you had the atmosphere, which, the likes of Tommy Barrett and the Treaty team were calling for. They got probably 800, 900, close enough to 1,000 compared to recent crowds. And there was a real togetherness, obviously, afterwards as well between the supporters and the players, which I hadn't seen, obviously, since they reached the playoffs last year, and maybe not even then. A brilliant night overall for the club.
Yes, it was a great night to be there. And you mentioned the playoffs last year; it was night and day. The performance was outstanding. Played really well as a team. It was hard to pick out a weak link. They got their tactics spot on. They were well up for the game. Very aggressive in the right way, and really didn't give UCD a sniff. I thought Tommy's interview was being a little bit kind to UCD after the game, where he felt that the 4-1 flattered him. I didn't think it flattered him at all.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you there. Two star performers on the night. Noel, when you looked at the performance, was obviously Enda Curran scoring a hat trick. That brings his total to 16 goals for the season as well in all competitions. Really good night for Enda Curran. Also as well, Willie Armstrong got on the score sheet, but it was what his performance deserved on the night, Noel. And those two guys were star performers, and they really did drive the team on from the first minute.
I think you're right. Look, we kind of speak every week about Enda Curran and what a brilliant finisher he is. And you look at the 3 goals, we were a bit worried about the penalties. Super penalty, unsavable, hard and low into the bottom corner. Lovely deft finish, lovely little deft finish for the second goal, where he just nicked it ahead of the goalkeeper in off the post. And the technique for the volley was outstanding for the third goal. And we do know he has it in the locker. And in fairness to Tommy, he's brought it out of him this season probably more consistently than a lot of managers have managed over a long period of time with Enda Curran. And maybe Enda Curran is looking at himself now at 30 years of age and has realised the gifts he has and said, well, I won't have too many more opportunities to play at this level and to show what I can do. And he's certainly been a huge signing for Treaty and probably one of the best finishers in the league, whether it's the First Division or the Premier League. I thought Willie Armstrong was outstanding and probably deserves even more credit that Enda Curran with the pedigree Enda has. I mean, Willie Armstrong has come in as a junior player, struggled a bit, had some real good cameo roles next year, but he absolutely terrorised UCD right from the first minute on Friday night. Created a great chance for Enda Curran when he nutmegged Sam Todd in the edge of the box. And all during the game, he was just outstanding. And look, he must feel really good about himself. I remember when I was down in Wexford and Danny Furlong actually scored a hat-trick when we beat Derry City 4-1 in the FAI Cup. But I had another person in my head as man of the match as well. And look, it's hard not to give the man of the match to the guy who scores the hat-trick, because that's the eye-catching one. But certainly for me, Willie Armstrong was the best player on the pitch on Friday night.
Yeah, Willie Armstrong has certainly improved his performances, Noel, because as I said to him in the interview I had with him afterwards, he really did have to bide his time in general, not just last year, but this year he wasn't getting a lot of game time. There was clamour from supporters to get him on the field. He has taken his chance in the last few weeks, there's no doubt about it. And I mean, maybe in some ways the unknown factor has helped Willie out, because, coming up against Evan Ozam here, who I know would have been relatively familiar with Armstrong from last season, but because he's not a League of Ireland stalwart as such, I think that in the low centre of gravity helps as well with his dribbling skills. But it does seem to catch opposition players out, and it's almost too late by the time they catch on to Willie.
Yeah, I think you're right. We spoke about UCD beating Dundalk last week. It looked to me as if it was a kind of a disadvantage to them, and they came down in the wrong frame of mind, thinking, well, if we can beat Dundalk, we can certainly beat Treaty. Their tactics were very poor from the start. They lost the aerial battle, I thought, particularly Ben Reardon with those switch balls, trying to switch the play. He attacked the ball in the air, and UCD had no answer to that. I think they gave away 5 or 6 frees from attacking the man, if you like, or jumping with the man as opposed to jumping to win the ball. And I thought Evan Ozam was particularly poor. He's probably one of the most experienced players they have. He's with them 4 or 5 years. He was actually involved with the team that won the league 4 or 5 years ago, even though halfway through the season he did get a cruciate. But certainly a night to forget for him. And I think Willie Armstrong will be a handful for anyone now between now and the end of the season who comes up against him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the semi-final draw, I know, Noel, we both mentioned last week that the draw had been relatively kind to Treaty until now, with the fact that you had Ulster and Maynooth in the earlier rounds. Obviously, you know, a great achievement then to beat UCD at home, Premier Division opposition. But, you know, now you go into it. I remember looking at the draw last night, and when I saw that Shelbourne and Waterford got each other, I was praying that Treaty would be the first name out of the hat. Unfortunately, Alan Keane picked out Derry City first. So it's a trip to the Brandywell on Sunday, October 16th. It's confirmed now that it'll be on at 2 o'clock live on RT2 as well. So obviously a big day for the club, but I suppose not an ideal draw, because not only are you travelling so far, Noel, but you're also playing against the best ranked team left in it now, and a team who just swept aside Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear the club PRO on the local radio last night predicting that Shamrock Rovers would be a good draw for them in the semi-final, despite the fact that the match between Shamrock Rovers and Derry City wasn't over. But certainly a tough draw for Treaty, no doubt about it. I think we spoke about the draw being kind to them. That luck certainly ran out last night. But in fairness, I don't think they care who they get at this stage. Look, they're in bonus territory. All the games would have been difficult, you know, and there's certainly no expectation on them, I think, as regards Derry. And look, if you want to win the cup at this stage, you're going to have to beat them, and they may well have a better chance of beating them in the semi-final than a final in Lansdowne Road. It'll be a fantastic day. There'll be 4,000 or 5,000 people there, and the atmosphere will be rocking. And look, they've nothing to lose, and certainly if they have that frame of mind that they had last week and are nice and aggressive and attack the ball and put their bodies on the line, you know, who knows what might happen.
Yeah, I know that it was 20 years ago now, which makes me feel very old now. I'm not sure about yourself, but obviously you had one of your greater nights in the Brandywell with Limerick FC, where you couldn't even fill a subs bench, if I remember correctly, and won the League Cup against Derry City on penalties. Obviously, we've had videos of it in over COVID, and people have been reminded of that. So I suppose will you be picking up the phone to give some advice to maybe Treaty on how to win at the Brandywell? And obviously Limerick FC did it about 6 years ago as well in the League Cup, but this is, I suppose, a different level again.
Yeah, it is, there's no doubt. And I don't feel that old, in fairness, because I was actually younger than some of the players we had at the time as well. So I certainly don't feel old now. No, listen, it was a great time as well. And look, the draw certainly wasn't kind to us. Any part of that competition where we were away to Galway United, then away to Cork City, and at home to Shamrock Rovers before we got to play Derry, you know. But look, Tommy will be ready for that. There's a lot has been spoken about us, and it'll be something that we certainly won't forget. And it's probably something that they should think about, to say, look, it has been done before. It certainly makes a difference when you can point to something, you know, where it has happened before. And we had to beat them over 2 legs as well. So, you know, Treaty have the advantage of a one-off game with them, where they don't get a chance to come back and, you know, right the wrong of it. But listen, it will be a difficult task, and I've heard Tommy this season a few times about 4G pitches. Well, that's something that they're going to have to get their heads around, as well as the Brandywell now is a 4G pitch. But they'll get plenty of opportunity to work on those surfaces while they're training outside Newell.
Yeah, just looking at that atmosphere yesterday between Derry City and Shamrock Rovers, I suppose in some ways, even though it was a smaller crowd, it was similar to the reaction the Derry players were over with their supporters cheering on after such a big victory, Noel. In some ways, I suppose, even though it can be a daunting task playing with that kind of, against that kind of ferocious crowd and players, it can also galvanise an away team as well, can't it? When it kind of feels like a bit of us against the world on the night, when there's only going to be probably a relatively small band of hardcore Treaty fans there.
Yeah, and I have to agree with that. And I thought we had the advantage, even though our match was on at, say, 7:45, but we travelled the night before and stayed in Ballybuffet, you know, and we headed off nice and early, and, you know, we were together, you know, for a good 24 hours before the game, and it does make a difference. And Treaty would probably travel on the same day and maybe come in dribs and drabs as such to their away matches this season, and I'm sure they'll stay overnight with, you know, with a 2 o'clock start, and it'll give them a real chance to really pull together, and that is certainly an advantage, because, you know, with Derry, they'll just be turning up on the Sunday maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours before the kickoff.
Yeah, definitely. And just to finish the discussion maybe on the semi-final until 3 weeks' time, 3.5 weeks' time, when we discussed it in further detail. We discussed a couple of the big calls. Obviously, Jack Lynch was out. We believe it could be a recurrence of the injury that he had suffered with for a couple of months. That was so Ben Reardon did slot back in. There was no decision in the end to be made for Tommy. But one decision he did make was that Conor Wynne retained his place in goals. Noel. Now, look, it was hard to judge anything the other night because he wasn't really tested, as you said, Treaty dominated throughout. But now it really does come to fruition there. What do you do? Do you put Jack Brady back in, who's been your number one in the league, for a semi-final, or do you stick with a man who's played with you through all the rounds of the FAI?
Yeah, well, obviously, as you said, there's 4 weeks to go. So, assuming the two of them stay fit between now and then, like if there is a decision to be made, I would feel that I would go with Jack Brady for that semi-final. And while Conor Wynne, he had a fine game, we did note in the first 10 or 15 minutes there was a couple of strikes went in on the ground, and they kind of came off him a little bit. And on another night, maybe someone was, you think if Colm Whelan was there from last year, if he was in around the box then and he got a little nick on those, the tone of the game just might have been a little bit different as it turned out. But I think at that stage, if you're playing the semi-final of the FAI Cup, I think you've got to go with your best 11. And look, it's evident that Jack Brady is certainly the number one keeper there, and I would expect that if both of them are fit on the night, then Jack Brady will start that game.
Yeah, certainly, and that, I mean, caps our chat on the cup. I suppose we'll have to return to league focus now. Treaty, it's an earlier kickoff, Noel, in Bishopsgate this week against Longford Town. Treaty travel to the Midlands due to the Irish game. I would assume, obviously, 4:00 start. Treaty have a very good record, Noel, against Longford. A good one anyway. A very good 3-0 win against them in the last outing at the Marks Field, and also 2-0 all draw. So they haven't conceded against Longford yet. Now the pessimist in me thinks that it's rare that you can keep that up against any side in any league. But it's interesting, though, because if Treaty do win, even though they'll have a game more played than Longford, it brings it back to 1 point. So that could really open up the playoff places as such in terms of where you finish in the league.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, the worry or the thing that they're going to have to watch out for this week is the high that they're on now. And we spent the first 15 or 20 minutes talking about the cup and the match that's on in 4 weeks' time. And if you go back to Wexford having a great win above in Sligo, the following week they kind of slumped to poor performance, and I think it was a 2-2 draw with Cove maybe, or they kind of knocked the wind out of their sails. And look, it is an important game, obviously, because it's their next game and they want to finish as high as they can and pick up as much points as they can. And I think the key thing about this week is getting everyone's feedback on the ground and tell them, look, we'll deal with the cup in a couple of weeks, but we have a couple of really important league games. They'll want to put that playoff place to bed. Sooner or later they're going to get it, but look, the sooner that they nail it, the better, and they could certainly do that this weekend. They'll want to put in a good performance. You guys now who will be having one eye in that semi-final and maybe wanting to play themselves into the team, because in 4 weeks a lot of things can happen, injuries and suspensions and things like that. And provided that they do that, you would fancy them to get at least a point on Saturday. And I think they would be happy with an away point to Longford at this stage of the season.
Yeah, one of senior soccer's finer moments was when Limerick FC won the league in Longford in 2012, Noel, in recent years. So we're hoping for something similar. It won't be of the same level, obviously, but to get to a playoff and seal that on Saturday would be superb for Treaty United, second season in a row as well. For that, I suppose, considering Noel, we don't know any update in terms of injuries outside of the Jack Lynch situation. Considering Treaty have won 3 games on the bounce, albeit all at home, 3 games on the bounce now, they're in great form going into this game. I assume your mind probably is saying, I've got to keep the same team if they're all fit and available to play, outside of maybe Jack Brady come back in for Conor Wynne.
I would expect Jack Brady to come back in, yeah. It'll be interesting to see if Jack Lynch appears in the squad this week, but he'll be itching to get back on again now, because he'll relish an opportunity to play in the Brandy. Well, other than that, I can't see too many changes in the team. When you've guys in form and scoring goals, like we didn't mention Dean George because of the outstanding performances the other two, but certainly played very well. I thought, Mark Walsh really marshalled that central midfield, and any high balls down the middle between the three of them, Shane Gearns and Callum Mack and Mark Walsh, they dealt with everything that came their way. And guys are really in form. And you could see the likes of Noel O'Connor coming on then. He was a bit more direct, I thought, than normally, because obviously when things are going as well as this, everyone wants to be part of it. So certainly a few selection headaches for Tommy, but I'd be inclined to stick with the guys in form and put it up to the people who are not playing at the moment to show in training, and certainly when they get a chance to come onto the pitch what they can do.
Yeah, certainly. I know when Mark Walsh came back originally, Noel, straight away, Callum McNamara, for the first 2 games, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was put back into midfield. Mark Walsh played at centre-back. I think that was changed after the Athlone defeat. Does it seem to be now like Callum Mack's days at the moment for Treaty in midfield are definitely over, and he's been fully converted to centre-back now?
I think so. I think probably the catalyst for it was his performance in Athlone. In terms of passing, gave away a couple of loose passes, I think, in that game that proved to be very costly for Treaty on the night. And look, their partnership, like it's pretty good. I think it's similar enough to, was it Anthony McDonald last year and Shane Gearns, and they certainly look like that. There's a bit of chemistry between the two of them, and with Mark Walsh in front of them protecting them, it looks a real solid back three in the central area in the last 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, it certainly does, and hopefully Treaty can come out on top of that clash with Longford and keep that unbeaten run against Longford going on Saturday. We better move on now, Noel, to a very topical issue. Obviously, Ireland are into their Nations League campaign, return to action in the Nations League this weekend, where they face Scotland at Hampden Park before playing Armenia 3 days later in the Aviva Stadium. They finished off on a high, Noel, in the last period, with a good draw against Ukraine, and obviously beating Scotland in style at home as well. The squad was named, obviously, Stephen Kenny recently. A couple of surprises. Max O'Leary, who we haven't seen a lot of, from Bristol City, a goalkeeper, was selected in the squad. And also, I suppose, as well, you've got Callum O'Dowda, who hasn't been picked for maybe a while. He's with Cardiff City now. He was involved again. And maybe the biggest but the least surprising was the return of Robbie Brady, because apparently he's been in great form with Preston North End this season. He returns to the fold as well. So a few changes maybe to the squad, Noel, but I suppose not a huge amount of surprises either, obviously.
No, I think you're always going to get that. And in fairness to Robbie Brady, like we always said about the pedigree that he had, like being a youth at Manchester United, and has been in fits and starts. Remember the Euros in 2016, with his goal against Italy, and around that time he certainly was in great form. And I suppose Stephen is looking at the setup of the team, with the wing backs, and certainly on the left hand side, you'd worry a little bit about Enda Stevens. His form hasn't been great over the last 12 or 18 months, certainly since Sheffield United were relegated out of the Premier League, and he's probably short on options there. And to bring someone in with that experience and certainly with a bit of form, it gives him options, particularly when they have 2 games to play in a matter of 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, it certainly does. Just to move on as well to their actual it is in terms of Nations League, Noel, optimism can dwindle very quickly, as we know, because you go in now to this game against Scotland. Ireland are currently on 4 points. You have Scotland currently on 6 and Ukraine on 7, but Ukraine and Scotland both have a game in hand. So you look at, if Scotland beat you, then there's almost all of a sudden again a bit of doom and gloom going into the game against Armenia. So these are important games now for Stephen Kenny.
I think there is, and he's kind of, they've had a lot of ups and downs, if you like, and people are desperate, for a consistent run. And you can come out and talk about, the future and what's happening in the future and that. But I think it is a very, very important game to them. They were certainly fantastic the last time against Scotland, and in fairness to them, they've been pretty decent in the away games. Certainly have given away, if you like, a couple of soft goals. There's less of them happening now, and certainly important if they can keep a clean sheet. You think with that group they have and with the enthusiasm they have, that they certainly have a chance. But you're right, the Scotland game Saturday is certainly a real pivotal game for this year.
I'd imagine, Noel, considering the personnel available anyway, 3-5-2 might be the preferred choice for him, with the likes of Duffy, Egan, and Nathan Collins able to play for him at his disposal on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think that was that idea was further strengthened by the fact of him bringing Robbie Brady into the squad, because I think if they were playing a flat back four, there mightn't be room for him. So look, most of the matches he's gone with that. And in fairness, some players have, benefited from that formation, even in terms of their own club careers. Matt Doherty being a particular good example of that. He seemed to, get himself going, and our own local recruit, Ogbenny, as well. I think that, the international boost he's got has certainly helped his club form. So if we can maybe see a couple of more lads like that. You mentioned Colin O'Dowd. I always liked him on the pitch, really, for his pace, and he looks a guy with a bit of upside. And hopefully, if he stays fit now, we might see a bit more of him in the next 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, certainly. And I know that Liam Scales was called in because Andrew Amadile was injured at the weekend. So that's another League of Ireland representative. But in big news for Limerick as a whole, Noel, Dara Costelloe, the Burnley player, was called into the Irish under-21 squad. We're getting closer, Noel, to bridging that gap maybe of having a Limerick native in the Irish senior squad. It's been quite a while.
Yeah, listen, it would be fantastic. And coming from a great sporting family as well. And look, that's a difficult gap to bridge as well. But certainly he seems to be in the right club, and he's getting plenty of exposure. And, if he can create a story, if you like, in that under-21 side, that's going pretty well, in fairness. Then it may be sooner rather than later we see that